Hello, my ladies with big brains, big hearts, and big dreams. Today I'm talking about something I rarely see anyone talk about, which is the pipeline from gifted or high achieving child to anxious, burnt out, and highly self critical adult. And what I've noticed is that a lot of women who were formerly gifted children are so high functioning and seem to have it all together, so much so that no one around them even notices that they are struggling internally, and therefore they rarely get the kind of support that they need. And this is something I've been observing for over 5 years now, guiding the most brilliant women from all around the world, many of whom were gifted children. And what I've noticed is that these women have unique brains. And I call these unique brains Ferrari brains because, much like a luxury sports car, these brains have power, precision, performance, speed. And much like a luxury sports car, these brains can easily spin out of control. They are more delicate. They have a very special kind of circuitry that gives them that drive, gives them all those capabilities, but that can also very quickly unravel and turn against them. And what happens is these women who were formerly gifted children are not taught that they have unique brains. They're not even aware of the fact that they have a Ferrari brain. Instead, they are relentlessly trained and pushed to push those Ferrari brains to the absolute maximum, nonstop without stopping. And this is absolutely crazy because everyone knows, even in a race, a Ferrari or any other sports car does not keep going and going. It has to stop. It has to be managed and maintained. There's a whole team involved with getting that car settled in and given what it needs to keep going. But instead, these high achieving women, these high achieving children are just taught to go, 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 and are never taught how do we actually manage and maintain this very unique brain with this very powerful engine. So with that being said, let's jump into the specific unique challenges that adult women who are formerly gifted or high achieving children face that go far beyond anxiety, burnouts, and high self-criticism. But before I jump into the first challenge, I just want to let you know that if this is resonating with you, this is exactly the kind of work that I do with my high achieving clients. All right, I'm going to share these challenges from most visible to the outside world to least visible to the outside world. The first and most visible bucket is mental overload. Women with Ferrari brains who used to be high achieving children, like I said, have these fast brains. And unfortunately, that speed can go in a very negative direction very quickly, especially if that's what you're used to. And so you see a lot of anxiety in these women. You see a lot of excessive worry. You see rumination. You see overthinking. Let me know in the comments if you can resonate with that. And it makes sense if you were a little girl, you were constantly on and doing and thinking. You were at school, you had to focus. After school, you did your homework. You probably had a lot of extracurricular activities. Raise your hand if that was you too. And so you were never taught to stop. You were never taught to turn off your brain. You were never taught why it might be good for you to turn off your brain. Like I said, even a Ferrari has to stop before it can keep going. Otherwise, it's going to completely combust, break down, and stop. And unfortunately, that is what I do see in a lot of women who are formerly gifted children. I do see burnout. So let me skip over to the second bucket, which is massive pressure. This might be a little bit less visible. It tends to run underneath the surface. So what I'm talking about is stress. And what's funny is that a lot of these former gifted children will tell you, I'm not stressed, I'm not anxious, I'm fine. Because everything is internalized, because they have been trained from a young age to be stoic, to be calm, to be focused and disciplined, and to be a good girl, actually. This internal turmoil, we become experts at hiding it. In fact, so many high achieving women that I meet initially, they think that stress is good for them. They think that stress helps them succeed. And I'm not judging because that used to be me too. I used to think that stress was a part of the sacrifice I had to pay to reach my goals. Now I know better. Now that I know that the less stressed I am, actually the more productive I can be, the more I can shine in my gifts, and the more recognition, respect, and success I can create. But women who haven't been taught how to manage their beautiful Ferrari brains, unfortunately, are stuck in these stress patterns. And that also manifests frequently as overworking, overfunctioning, overdoing, doing too much. I call this workhorse syndrome, and it's especially prevalent in the corporate environment, and is especially prevalent among women who are first gen immigrants, daughter of immigrants. There's just, like I said, this constant relentless pressure that puts these women in this fight or flight mode where they feel safer doing and taking action than they do sitting still. And unfortunately, this constant action, even though they're very capable and they have amazing brains that can help them achieve so much, unfortunately, it ultimately causes exhaustion. You're a human being, not a human doing. You're a human, not a robot. You're a human, not a machine. Even the computer needs to reset and reboot every once in a while, let alone a human. And so you have these incredibly capable women, unfortunately, burning themselves out. And this causes damage to your body, to your nervous system. This causes aging. The stress is not good for us. There's a reason why cortisol face was trending online because, yes, the more stressed we are, the more we're pumping our body with these hormones and things to help us continue moving and going and going and going. But who's to say that that is good for our body? Our body was never meant to be in this constant state of pressure, stress, and overworking. And I myself suffered health issues. I see this a lot in my clients. I see a lot of PCOS, which is what I used to have. No doubt, I know that was because of my Ferrari brain driving me to overachieve and overwork myself. And looking back, I can now see how that dysregulated my blood sugar. It dysregulated my hormones. There's this cascading event of what happens when we have these powerful engines that we don't know how to manage and maintain. Besides PCOS, I also see a lot of autoimmune issues in my clients, the body literally attacking itself. But quite frankly, and I have controversial views on this, it's almost like your body is begging you to stop. It's almost like your body is forcing you to stop. I remember when I used to have debilitating period pain. It was like my body was like, oh my God, Anna, once a month for one day, can you just slow down? Can we just sit down? Can you go at 80% today instead of 120%, which was my normal, and anything below that was inexcusable in my book. So if you're starting to feel these health issues and you're a former gifted child, this is something you need to explore. And I'm going to be honest with you, there is no supplement, there's no diet, there's no magic pill that can help you if you don't get this stress and pressure under control. And the only way to do that is to learn how to manage your unique brain. And finally, an honorable mention under this bucket, I see a lot of headaches and a lot of migraines among former gifted children women. Why? Literally pressure and tension on your head. Literally your head is about to explode because of all the anxiety, rumination, overthinking, constantly thinking about either doing or thinking about doing, either slaying your goals or thinking about slaying your goals. Of course your head is going to hurt. And so this is the pattern that I see among women who just can't take their foot off of the gas pedal because you were never taught that that was an option. And you also were never taught how to do that in a way that doesn't feel like death. I know so many high achieving women who can't relax in the evenings, struggle with sleep, can't even relax on their vacations or their days off or their weekends because we were never taught that it's okay. We were never taught how, and we were never taught how to make our bodies and our minds safe with slowing down and with taking a break. I get really emotional about this because you have the world's most brilliant women out there who are meant to do brilliant things and change the world in their unique ways. But then you have these patterns that often come from childhood, come from that survival period, and we normalize it that these women are in this survival for their whole lives, but it's actually destroying them. I was that woman for so many years. And the ironic part is, you probably resonate with this, those achievements never even brought me the joy and satisfaction that I thought they would. I was literally happy for a split second and then I moved on to the next goal. Why? Because that is what an unmanaged Ferrari brain does. It keeps on going and it doesn't stop. It can't even stop for a moment to celebrate, appreciate, and be happy with what you have achieved with all that hard work. All right, let's move on to the next bucket, which is suffering from impossible expectations. I am talking about standards that like Superwoman couldn't even reach because as a former high achieving child, you already had super high standards for yourself. They were basically imposed upon you and you were expected to be exceptional. And that turned into you feeling that you are forced to be exceptional in every way, every day, in every area of life for the rest of your life. This is why I see perfectionism in almost all of my clients, that relentless pursuit for perfection, which is not even achievable. And by the way, the more you try to be perfect, the less perfect you are because your nervous system kicks in and you actually can't perform at the highest level that you possibly could. So I'll give you a quick example. I have a lot of clients who want to work on public speaking and they think that they need to perfect their public speaking skills. But when they come to my world, they learn that no, what we need to do is learn to manage your Ferrari brain. And two of the three components of that are rewiring your brain away from these patterns, away from the self-criticism, negative self-talk, all of that negativity spiral. And we need to regulate your nervous system because guess what? When your mind isn't spiraling, when your body feels safe and like you can exhale, that's when you speak from your power. That's when you hold presence. That's when you are magnetic. So you probably don't need more skills if you're a former gifted child. You probably need to rewire your brain and regulate your nervous system. All things I help with. All right, so I already mentioned it, but with these high impossible standards comes this self-criticism. I'm talking brutal self-talk. And the crazy part is, most women don't even realize how nasty they speak to each other in their minds. And that's the crazy part. Like I said, because it's so hidden, because it's so invisible, because nobody sees it, these women themselves also don't notice that they are shitting on themselves 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And so when you have these high expectations, perfectionism, and this awful negative self-talk, what happens is you have low self-esteem. I'm going to say it. A lot of confident women who are former gifted children look confident on the outside. They have perfected that mask of impenetrability and looking like they've got it together and that they're strong. But deep inside, the self-esteem is extremely low. And this is very dangerous because when you have a Ferrari-brained woman with low self-esteem, she uses that powerful brain to seek external validation to try to fill up this void in her. But unfortunately, as I've learned, no amount of external validation can ever fill that void for you. You have to work on your self-esteem. And the best way you can work on your self-esteem is conquering that inner critic because your inner critic is what's making your self-esteem go lower and lower and lower. And when you have this low self-esteem, you're also walking around with self-doubt. You have brilliant women meant to do brilliant things, but they're constantly second guessing themselves, doubting themselves, going back to the first bucket. They're overthinking, they're feeling anxious, they're not sure, like, can I do this? Am I capable of doing this? And so you also have a lot of imposter syndrome, which is crazy because so many of my clients are actual experts, actual authorities. They are meant to share their wisdom with the world, whether it's in their corporate world or in their business. And yet they feel like they're an imposter and they're not good enough and they don't know enough. This is all a symptom of having a Ferrari brain and being a former gifted child. And finally, the most invisible thing I've observed among women with Ferrari brains who are formerly high achieving children is they are going through a permanent sort of identity crisis. Let me explain. So you have this brilliant woman with so much pressure, such high expectations, and that leads to these kind of existential concerns. Who am I? What am I doing with my life? Am I good enough? Is what I'm doing good enough? Am I reaching my potential? Am I being the exceptional person I was trained to be? There's all this like murky water confusion that happens in this brilliant mind of this type of woman. And what adds to this identity crisis is this huge fear of failure. Let me tell you, I sometimes wish I could just pop a button and turn off the brains of my clients so that they could have the confidence and the audacity of mediocre men, okay? Because when you are so highly intelligent and you see so much, you can also see the potential for failures. You can just the same way you can see everything that can go right, you can see even more so everything that can go wrong. And so this fear of failure often holds back my brilliant women. It holds them back. And then you have people with not the same skill set, maybe not the same brain power, but they're out there doing the thing because they're not held back by that fear of failure. Along this note, there's this risk aversion. among these kind of women. So whereas other people might try something new or take the leap or experiment with something, women with Ferrari brains that were formerly gifted children are afraid to take that risk because their whole lives they were trained to be very linear and only be successful. There's the identity crisis, right? I can only be exceptional. I can only be successful. Thus, I cannot possibly try something that might not be a 11 out of 10 success. It's way too risky for my identity and my self-concept. And so you have a lot of brilliant women actually operating in their zone of excellence or their zone of competence and not in their zone of genius because the zone of genius is usually more unique, it's more distinct, and it requires courage to put yourself out there to be able to do the work that's within your zone of genius. Women who used to be gifted children are actually brilliantly trained to be in their zone of excellence and competence because guess what? A lot of brands and institutions and companies and corporations really benefit from having women like that with powerful brains doing those kind of more executive type of functions and keeping the whole show running. And also these women are rewarded for that. And so they're less likely to take a chance, take a risk on something that might actually be their soul path, their purpose, or their destiny. This fear of failure and risk aversion causes women to either quit too early if they're not instantly amazing at it, right? I want you to imagine you're learning how to ice skate. If you're not immediately a figure skater that's in the Olympics, you quit. Or my favorite, you never even start. So if you don't know for sure you're going to be amazing at something or succeed and slay in it, you might just lean back and say, I'm not going to try this at all. And this is really, really, really sad. And this kind of existential dread and identity crisis, it feels like a breakdown, when a Ferrari finally is like, let's say the Ferrari was driven around the track over and over again relentlessly with no path. The Ferrari's finally like, you know what? I'm just gonna break down right here and just chill out because what else am I gonna do? And this is what I do observe in my brilliant women is there is this proneness to depression. I'm not a medical doctor, so I won't talk to the medical part of depression, but you can see how depression is this state of giving up, no longer wanting to move, fear, feeling trapped, paralyzed. And that is oftentimes, I think, where these high achieving women reach that point, unfortunately, because the previous buckets were never addressed. The anxiety, the self criticism, the pressure, the expectations, the overworking, all of those things cascade and like I said into those different health issues and oftentimes they do culminate in very bad burnout, breaking down, depression, whatever it might look like for you specifically, I don't know, but there is this point where your body and your brain just say enough is enough. And then we have brilliant women who are not doing their life's work that they were put on here to do. Speaking of depression, I feel like that kind of ended on a depressive note. So let me bring the energy back in here and just assure you that the reason why I'm sharing all this is not to be like, wait, look at you, you suck. No, the reason why I'm illuminating this to you is because I want your beautiful, brilliant brain to start noticing all these patterns that I shared. And I want you to let go of blaming yourself. If you resonated with any of these struggles or all of them, I want you to let go of the self blame because I promise you it's not your fault. You literally have this magical, unique brain, and you were just never taught that you have a unique brain, and you're never taught how you can manage it so that it's more of like your best friend as opposed to your enemy, so that it helps you as opposed to feels like something that is like enslaving you or relentlessly pushing you in that kind of nasty, forceful way. And I'll be honest, if someone from the future went back in time and told me all this and told me, by the way, this is totally fixable and you don't have to live like this, and it's not normal that you are so stressed, so anxious all the time, on the brink of burnout, on the weekends, you completely just shut down and you don't do anything and you often cry. That was me. It was called Depression Saturdays. I wouldn't have believed that person, but I have lived through this and come to the other side, and I have helped hundreds of women like us, formerly gifted, high achieving, brilliant, passionate, caring, creative. I have helped women like us get out of this. This specific video was inspired by one of my brilliant clients who was a gifted child, and she was specifically labeled with an anxiety disorder as a child, and she lived with this her whole life, massively successful, ended up being an engineer working in a male-dominated space and slaying it. And guess what? After working with me, she said, Anna, I no longer resonate with having an anxiety disorder. I'm not an anxious person. Once she learned how to manage her unique Ferrari brain, she was no longer anxious. And by the way, this process only took 3 months. We rewired her brain, regulated her nervous system using a specific science-based tool that works amazingly well for women like us. And now she's free of that. And actually, she's looking to change careers out of engineering to do something that's more aligned with her zone of genius. If you're curious about how we can work together so you can be more successful while feeling better, then check out the description box below. And if you are fascinated with this concept of the Ferrari brain that I created, I invite you to check out my other video where I go super deep on it, explaining the challenges of high IQ that nobody talks about. See you in the next one.